Welcome, health junkies, to the Health Fix. Today, I have a special guest, Elicia Miller, on. I'm so excited to talk to her because she has a subject that is close to my heart because I spend a lot of time in my practice trying to convince patients that their symptoms are not always something functional. Sometimes it has to do with emotions. And Elicia has personal experience in this realm in terms of working with her own digestive issues as well as overeating to overcome it by figuring out what is going on with those repressed emotions. And so without any further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Elicia Miller here.
Hi.
There she is. And so, Elicia, one of the big things that I wanted to bring you on my podcast for is to talk about how all of these different symptoms that we have can be related to emotions, and really kind of getting over that stigma that when we say emotions, it's not that we're kind of telling someone it's all in their head. It's more that, no, this is a real deal. There are distinct emotions that go along with
Yeah,
our symptoms.
definitely. It's all in their subconscious, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's typically things they are not aware of, and that's why my tagline is "Your symptoms are a gift,"
Mm-hmm.
because the symptoms are there, and I'm not talking about all symptoms. Not every symptom or illness is emotional, but a lot of the stuff that we're seeing that's chronic, that people struggle trying to fully heal from, or they've given up that that they can heal from it, and they're on medication or restrictive diets for the rest of their life. So the symptoms are there to alert us because we haven't been accessing and processing emotional traumas from our childhood. And so they typically show up to let us know that we're still living from the pain, and it's time to work it out, feel it, release it, move on from it.
Absolutely. And this is, something I struggle with because, yes, I'm a naturopath, and naturopaths are known to, here's your suitcase of supplements, let's figure this out. And for me, I don't want to be giving people more supplements. I don't want to be giving people these diets where I can never have gluten ever again. I can never have X, Y, and Z. It just seems almost crazy to me. And then we have patients who I've given all of these restrictive diets and a million detoxes. We talked about that with your personal experience as
Yes.
well. And then next thing you know, it's nothing. We're 6 months later and still same symptoms. And so the concept of your symptoms being a gift, when I saw this, when you reached out to me, I was like, yes, I need how to help me. So one of the other big things that I really wanted to get some answers from you on is this concept of the repressed emotions and trauma. Because I have so many patients that'll say to me, well, I wasn't abused, nothing seriously happened. My parents aren't divorced. I don't really have trauma. I don't have these little things. And so it's kind of, how do you get people to connect with the symptoms and the emotion?
Yeah. Well, that's why I love working with symptoms, because typically the person is not aware that they have repressed emotions, emotional trauma, and emotional trauma can come from emotional neglect. So emotional abandonment. And so the symptoms are there. So at least there's something that's helping them, drive them to say, what is causing this? And then it leads them to down this path of, I've already tried everything on the physical level. I've done the diet, I've done the supplements, what else could it be? And then it leads them to finally be open to looking at, okay, this may be emotional, let's talk about it. And so we'll go into what has impacted them that they're not aware of. Most people, and that's a common defense from a child, is to make everything normal, like that's just a normal thing. They love me and there's nothing wrong with what's going on. And so we kind of dive deeper. Like, I'll give you an example. I have someone with Hashimoto's, and she said, when she first contacted me, I suggested, for her to work on this, go down this road in terms of the inner child work and processing out her emotions. And she said, well, nothing happened to me. As a child, my parents were very supportive and loving. And so that's the typical thing that I hear. And then when I, kind of go into, well, what was it like? And well, my father always wanted me to be the best and to be, above average. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of pressure. Like, what did you have to give up to always be the best? What emotions were repressed to push you to excel and be what he wanted you to be? And that's just her father. And then her mother, there was another dynamic where she wasn't able to be supported on an emotional level. It was more of her supporting her mom. And so that's very common. And most of the clients that I work with, it's they gave up their emotional needs to be loved and to make sure their parents were happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot, and definitely can resonate with a couple things, especially this need to please someone, the perfectionism in a lot of folks. And I find that when I explore more with my patients, I find that there is this overarching need to achieve, need to succeed, need to impress the parents. They might even be dead and they're still trying to impress this imaginary individual now at this point. And so what have you connected in terms of symptoms to this need to achieve, this need to succeed and drive, push the limits?
So that need comes out of a belief that I'm not good enough. So then that creates a lot of repressed emotions of how painful it felt, how sad they were and scared they were and angry they are because they weren't loved the way they needed to be. And so then the compensation for that is, well, I need to prove and get other people's approval and make sure that I'm perfect, I'm achieving, I look perfect, and all of these things. And so it's completely cutting them off from their true essence, their emotions, their intuitive guidance system. And so they're not connected to their body, and they're not connected to their body's signals of, hey, this is what I want, this is not what I want, because what's driving them is looking outside of themselves to seek the love and approval that they need to give to themselves. And that starts with listening to how they feel. So when they don't listen to how they feel, and they don't take care of their emotional needs, that typically comes out in physical symptoms.
And what are some of those common physical symptoms? Because I know a lot of my patients, everyone has gas and bloating. Everyone has this, or, everyone has travel constipation, or, I get a lot of that. And I think hearing a little bit about what repressed emotions are connected with particular symptoms, I think would be good for my audience.
Okay. Yeah. And it's a great that you brought that up, because people normalize symptoms, so, well, I thought everyone blew their nose when they woke up, and it just runs in the family, or constipation, so I take this. And so common symptoms are of repressed emotions and not feeling your emotions, definitely a lot of digestion problems. So those can range from just poor digestion, bloating, to diseases like Crohn's, celiac, candida overgrowth, things like that. Other symptoms, that I work a lot with people with candida. So candida overgrowth and digestion problems and rashes. Rashes are definitely emotional. Eczema, and then to things like Hashimoto's, hypo and hyperthyroidism. And so those are typically the common ones I work with, but I do work with anyone with symptoms, and there's always an emotional connection to them when they haven't been able to address it, on a physical level.
Absolutely. What do you say to folks, and this is something I get commonly too, is I have a lot of patients who, don't really pay attention to their symptoms at first. And then all of a sudden it seems that they go through a stressor, or they have, for example, I just saw a gal yesterday who had a foot surgery that was a bunion surgery, something really basic, but she ended up with an infection. And then now it's tons of antibiotics, things of that nature. And she's starting to notice all of these symptoms compounding, and was diagnosed with Hashimoto's like a week ago, and never had anything like that prior that she knew of.
Yeah. So what I have seen is that something will happen to someone to manifest the symptom of what they're experiencing. So Hashimoto's is, directly related to not knowing what they want, feeling hopeless and helpless. So these feelings and emotions are there. And then I see that things will start happening for them to manifest that condition. And like you said, it's like something will trigger it. And then, so it's confusing for a lot of people. They're like, oh, well, I see, I probably got it because I was loaded with antibiotics, and yes, on a physical level that could be, but also, there's life is happening for us all the time. And so, life directed you to, your bunion, exploded so you can get antibiotics. So then this, and then it triggered that. And then bam, you have the manifestation of how you really feel.
It's almost like the universe has a way of bringing the emotions and symptoms to the surface for us.
Yes.
In a big train wreck sometimes, unfortunately for some folks.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's often a life event or something that triggers what's always been there. So I'm working with someone now who had a surgery for something. And ever since that surgery, she has anxiety, but the anxiety had always been there. So we looked at what the surgery was for and what the emotional reasons for that were, that triggered how she really felt. And it's just like, it was time for her to address it. I do believe we manifest things, and they get worse when we're not listening, and our souls want to experience, who we really are instead of what we've experienced as a child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I want to learn a little bit more about your process with patients, because obviously one of the big reasons that I wanted to have you on was because I definitely want patients to know about you and learn from you and be able to access you. Now, I know you have a retreat coming up, and I know you were talking about how group sessions are amazing for getting results. And I know a lot of my patients are like, oh, I'm not going on a Facebook group. I'm not doing a group, blah, blah, blah. I want to hear kind of your take on why groups are the way to go, and what kind of transformation one might see in a retreat type of setting.
Yeah. So I love group work. It changed everything. It was a game changer for me, the work that I'm doing and the results my clients receive through it. So whatever they typically don't want to do is what they need to do to get what they need. So that's what I continue to say in my program is like, whatever it is that you really don't want to do is what you need to do. And it's going to get you to where you want to be. So the group work, most people are not confident, not comfortable sharing, not being vulnerable. That's all of the reasons why they're experiencing what they're experiencing. They may have social anxiety. They have a lot of shame. They feel like whatever they say isn't right, perfectionism, things like that. So that's so whenever anyone says, well, I don't do well with groups, I say, well, be comforted that no one in this group is comfortable in it, but the comfort comes from relaxing into the safe space that I create. So on the retreat, I do with my friend and colleague, Janet Krause, and we're both very skilled in creating a safe and loving space. Both of us have worked through, we've gone on the hero's journey and worked through all our shadow and darkness and our pain. And so we're able to hold a space to help people go deep into their pain. And we do it in a very loving and compassionate way. So there isn't any, I see, with some therapists and practitioners who haven't done their own emotional work, it can come out and not feel safe for, the clients to go deep and be vulnerable with them. So that's why, it is important for the leaders of a program like this to have already done the work themselves. And so what happens in the group, though, is they do feel safe, and there's no judgment. So whatever they say, so for the first time, most of them in their life, they can say whatever, all of their embarrassing things that they weren't able to tell anyone. And it's they're seen, validated, their pains validated. Then they start to shift like, oh, there isn't anything wrong with me. Oh, I had every right to feel the way, I do. And I help them go into those emotions they've been avoiding their whole life. So also they start to hear from other people of what they've gone through the group sharing. I'll point out what wasn't right and what they actually needed and what they didn't get. And then everyone else hears that. So what they get is exponential from the group sharing in terms of hearing and relating and then being understood and, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, okay. So they feel supported and they experience unconditional love, which is what ultimately heals them from their abuse, or neglect.
Your retreats sound amazing, and I know you have one coming up. And do you have any space left in that one? Should anyone be interested? How do they find you? And for future retreats, because of course I want this to be something that's kind of an evergreen sort of podcast. Where's the best way to find you?
So the retreat that I do with Janet, they could go to, our retreat name is Sacred Emotion Retreat. And so they could go to sacredemotionretreat.com. It's also on my website, Elicia, Elicia, Miller.com. And so our next retreat is March 11th through 18th. So it's just 3 weeks away. 2017, and that's in Costa Rica. And we found the perfect place for us in Costa Rica. That's it's private, it's secluded, it's on a crystal mountain, and it was created by a celebrity chef, Diana Stobu, who creates the most beautiful gourmet, mostly raw food, but there's also cooked and some clean organic meats. In the place, the way it's designed, it's just absolutely gorgeous, luxurious, 5-star service, so it really supports our process because people feel held and all their needs are met, and they feel like, wow, like I do deserve this, and I do deserve to have all of this and experience that. So we love that place. It's really beautiful, breathtaking, views. It's, on a mountain, so you can see all the way to the ocean, and there's a saltwater pool that's built into the land. It's just gorgeous. So yeah.
I'm like going, can I be there right now? Amazing. So that sounds like that's the place where you two are going to keep having the retreats.
In Costa Rica. And then we'll have one in Bali as well, towards the end of this year. And and my husband and I are going to be doing couples retreats too. So it's all related. So it's a similar work that shows up in the body and also in your relationships. So yeah, it's just,
And that's huge, because I know you had mentioned to me some of your personal experience with going to the same kind of negative relationships over and over again. And I think a lot of people search out the same darn relationship over and over again. And that's so much part of the digestive issues, but almost, if I look at it, it seems that it's almost part of all adrenal fatigue, a lot of even going through Lyme and some of the other conditions where they're really difficult to treat, chronic fatigue. And when I look back at this, and I, I, as a naturopath, ask pretty much everything about someone's life, and I'm looking at all of the multiple relationships. One of the big things that I find is that we've got this overarching theme of seeking out the same poor relationship. And, a lot of people start to get scared because of being fearful of, if they lose that relationship, what do they do? And so I like the concept that you have the couples counseling, because quite possibly individuals might have sought out a certain person, but maybe with some couples counseling, you might be able to salvage that relationship. Is that even possible?
definitely. We just did. It's all related. So yeah, it's like going back to chronic fatigue, they're running on empty, and they don't know how to meet their own needs. And so oftentimes it's like doing too much, or not being able to say no, or, just always looking outside of themselves for what they need, not trusting themselves. And, that shows up in their relationship. They're not able to ask for what they need. They don't feel supported. So they can tend to feel victimized by their partner and life in general. Like nothing's ever working out for them because they didn't learn how to take care of their needs and listen to them and ask for what they need. So that's related with pretty much, that's across the board with with all the symptoms and relationship problems. And so one of the common defenses is to kind of blame the other person for not getting what you need, but only you can meet your own needs. And so if there's an unmet need from childhood, it's typically not, it gets recreated in the relationship. So, if they were abandoned emotionally or even physically, parents divorced, things like that, they may have a fear of abandonment and then recreate it through their behavior and their relationships, and pushing them away. And then, it reinforces that belief that they're not good enough. They don't get what they need, so definitely. And Doug and I just did a couples. So I was working with a client who has candida and hyperthyroidism, and so she went through my 60-day online program, and she started loving herself for the first time, and really, started valuing and honoring and feeling worthy of getting what she needed, but she didn't know how to. And her defenses were so strong that she kept protecting her pain that she needed to be with. And the protection created her not being able to get close to her husband and pushing him away and blaming him for everything. And so what she wanted to do was leave the relationship because that's what felt best to her. Like so she would just dream about being single and, traveling. And I was like, oh yeah, like that feels really good and safe, right? Like what doesn't feel safe is being in an intimate relationship if you have a lot of hurt still from childhood, because that's where it gets touched and reflected out, so we usually pick a partner that will trigger what's unresolved in childhood. And so Doug and I had so we, even though we had been doing our own inner work for many years, him 30 years when we met, and I had done my final emotional healing, getting out of the old pattern of not being supported in relationships to then finding someone who supported me. And then we went through a year and a half in our the first year and a half of our relationship with a ton of triggers. And so we were triggered all over the place. And because we do what we do, we were able to work it out and give ourselves what we needed, what it was triggering from childhood, and then process it out individually, and then, relate differently as a couple. So relationships can also be, in addition to the physical symptom guiding you, relationship triggers can also be a gift to help you clear out what's unresolved from childhood.
Oh my goodness, that's huge. That's huge. I'm glad you two teamed up. I know you had spoke that your husband is also he's a forensic psychologist. Is that what it was? Or?
He's a clinical and forensic psychologist. Yeah. So he's very intuitive, and we work very well together. So we actually did a couples workshop this past week, and that couple that I was sharing came, and some other couples, and we helped each person go into what they needed, and as a child, and got to that place, and then with the other person, and then they could see each other and understand each other better, and then it was so beautiful. It was before Valentine's Day. Both of them actually were ready to split up, like both these couples that came, and now they're communicating more, and it was a huge shift for everyone.
Oh my goodness. I think that is just incredible, because I'm thinking along the lines of so many people and so many of their struggles. And boy, wow. Yeah. Emotional triggers go so hand in hand with relationships and friendships too. I find that as well. And it's very interesting, the friends that folks choose. And so the one thing I also wanted to ask you here before we wrap up was a little bit more about your one-on-ones and your online course where you go through with people, and then you have them using a Facebook group, because I think a lot of my audience would like to hear kind of what that works as, say they just can't make it to Costa Rica or Bali. I mean, why wouldn't you want to? But if you can't, what about the online courses, and how does that look in terms of structure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's something to, offer to anyone anywhere in the world, because I've been using Zoom, what we're using now. I was using Skype before that, ever since I started my business. So I've been working with people all around the world. So the 60-day group program, I typically do it every 60 days, except the months where I do a retreat. So the next one's starting in April, and it's a prerequisite to anything else I do. So that is a course, and it's a supported process. So they're learning how to connect to their inner child, reparent her. It's a program for women, the group program is, and I do work with men privately, but I just wanted to clarify that because of the safe space that's created, it works better with just women at this point. My husband, Doug, does men's retreats and intensives. So for that group. Yeah. Yeah. So the 60-day program I put together after working for a long time with this process, bits and pieces, and I would work individual with people. And it just got to the point where I was like, there's a lot of lessons that I need to teach. And it's a process that works better when a group goes through it together. So whatever resistance and defenses are coming up, everyone gets to benefit from hearing me process it out or point out when someone is in a defense. And so defenses are the most important thing to know about in order to do this process. And I begin the process with covering defenses extensively. And then throughout the whole program, I encourage everyone to share in the Facebook group and ask whenever they don't want to ask, or share whenever they don't want to ask or share, because that's how they're going to get the most out of it. And typically their defenses are keeping them from feeling what they need to feel. And so, common defenses are, the protecting their parents, or, what happened in the past. It's in the past, and they're my childhood was okay. There was nothing wrong. Or jumping to forgiveness. Oh, I understand why they did what they did. They had a really hard childhood as well, which is, again, giving up your needs for theirs, and not acknowledging how things impacted you, even if they had the best intentions. And so that's, a common defense. Other ones will be, anger is scary, so I'm not going to get angry, or, because they were exposed to, maybe a raging parent, or their parents fought a lot. So the last thing they want to do is get angry. And anger is the most important thing to express in order to shift out of their patterns. And a lot of symptoms are caused by repressed anger. And so I teach them how to express and express their anger in a healthy way by themselves, so it doesn't come out at other people in inappropriate ways, and it doesn't get internalized with self-sabotaging behaviors. So anger is a big part of it, but it's not just about expressing their repressed emotions. It's about learning how to reparent themselves in a compassionate and nurturing way, of how to work with their negative self-talk and blaming themselves or feeling wrong, and then using whatever is coming up of how they don't feel like they're doing it right. Whatever their pattern is typically comes out in the process, and is exposed with the process. Like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing it right, and so I can help them connect to when they felt like that as a child. And so the process is so important to be supported and guided on a daily basis, because it's not like therapy is hard. Therapy is completely different. Therapy typically doesn't do this deeper emotional process, but also they're not being supported through whatever's coming up on a daily basis for them, which is really important to move through any resistance and fears, fear of failure, things like that. So I model in the Facebook group, as I support people, what compassion is and how to turn that within and develop self-compassion, which heals their shame ultimately.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Elicia, your expertise in helping people turn their symptoms around by looking at the emotions is amazing. And I'm really glad that you were able to spend some time with me today to chat about this. I am going to be signing up for your program as well, because I need this too. I think everybody can benefit. We all have our, let's say, shit literally in there, and working through it is huge. And for a lot of people, I think everyone can benefit from this. And so all of my health junkies out there on my podcast, I want you guys to go over to eliciamiller.com, ELICIA Miller.com. Check her out. She is amazing. And wow, I'm just blown away. And this is exactly what my patients need. So I think this is something that tons of people need. I'm going to definitely be sharing this every single chance I can.
Thanks.
Now, I want you to remind me of the website for your retreats as well, so everyone can check that out.
They can find everything on my website. And so it will list retreats, programs. I have a new page that's going to be couples. So for couples, so Doug and I also offer private couples sessions online, using Zoom as well. So that's typically part of it. But I have a free webinar that explains, and I go over how I came about this work and how I put it together, and what ultimately healed me and freed me from everything. And we're talking symptoms, like your symptoms are a gift. What I realized is addressing what I needed to address using the model that I developed freed me from not only my symptoms, but emotional eating and perfectionism and any compulsions and need to do something every day to feel better about myself. And it also freed me from codependent patterns with men and healers and friends and jobs and, things like that. So it really does. It's a core emotional healing, and it then improves every area of your life. It also helped me, and it helps all of my clients open up to their intuitive gifts and move into their purpose. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, and living your purpose is what it's all about. So I can't wait to see what else you've got coming up on the docket there and how the couples retreats kind of play out. I definitely am excited to tell folks about it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Janine. It was so great to talk to you. I'm so happy that you are giving this information and that you get it and you understand how this is needed for everything else to really shift. And people need to do their own healing, as well as getting the support, from a naturopath. And, we need everything, but we also need to give it to ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You gotta take care of yourself first, and that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.